The alien ship moved slowly through the dark space. Its name was Voidseeker, and it belonged to the Cathar people. These aliens were tall and strong, with thick green skin that looked like armor. Their eyes were yellow and cold. They had sharp teeth and claws that could tear through metal. Commander Zexhoriad on the bridge of his ship. He was bigger than the other Cathar, with scars across his face from many battles. His yellow eyes looked out at the floating pieces of metal and debris ahead of them. This was what remained of a human ship that had been destroyed long ago. "Take us closer," Zexahol ordered. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. The Cathar had won their war against the humans 50 years ago. Earth was now under their control. Most humans were dead or worked as slaves. Some had tried to escape into space, but the Cathar had hunted them down. This floating wreckage was proof of one such hunt. Dr. Veltar walked up beside the commander. He was smaller than Zexal, with thin arms and big eyes. He carried a data pad and wore the white coat of a scientist. "Commander, our scans show this was once called the New Horizon. It was a human colony ship." "Another failed attempt to escape," Zexal said with a low laugh. "The humans always thought they were so clever. They thought they could run from us. The New Horizon had been a massive ship once. Now it was broken into thousands of pieces. Some pieces were as big as buildings. Others were tiny bits of metal that sparkled in the light of distant stars. The humans who had lived on this ship were long dead. Their bodies had been frozen by the cold of space or burned up when the ship exploded." "Sir, we're picking up something unusual," said the ship's pilot. Her name was Kixra, and she was young for a Cathar. Her claws moved quickly over the control panels. "There's a section of the ship that's still powered. It's deep inside the wreckage." Zexal's eyes grew bright with interest. "Powered? After all these years?" "Yes, sir. It appears to be some kind of emergency section. The power source is very weak, but it's still working." Dr. Veltar looked at his data pad. "Commander, this could be valuable. If the humans left behind any technology or information, we should investigate." The commander nodded. "Send out a salvage team. I want to know what the humans were trying to hide." The Cathar salvage team put on their spacesuits and left the Void Seeker. They flew through the debris field in small ships, being careful not to hit the floating pieces of metal. The powered section was deep inside what had once been the New Horizon's core dot. It took them 2 hours to reach it. The section was about the size of a small building. It was made of thick metal that had protected it when the rest of the ship was destroyed. Small lights blinked on its surface, showing that something inside was still alive. "We found the power source," said the team leader through his radio. "It's connected to some kind of chamber. The humans built this place to survive anything." "What's inside?" asked Dr. Veltar. "We're cutting through the outer door now, sir." The team used laser cutters to open the chamber. Inside, they found a room filled with pipes and cables. Everything was covered in ice, but the machines were still working. In the center of the room was a large metal tube with a glass window on top. "It's a cryopod," said the team leader. "There's something inside." The team members moved closer to look through the glass. Inside the pod was a human male. He looked young, maybe in his 30s. His skin was pale from being frozen for so long. His dark hair was short, and his face was peaceful. He wore a simple blue uniform with a name tag that read, "Jake Morrison, Engineer." "He's perfectly preserved," said one of the team members. "The cold kept him from dying." "Bring him back to the ship," ordered Commander Zexal. "Dr. Veltar will want to study him." The team carefully moved the cryopod to their ship. It was heavy, but the Cathar were strong. They loaded it into the cargo bay of the Void Seeker and flew back to their main ship. Once they were back, "Doctor, Veltar examined the pod. He ran his clawed hands over the controls, trying to understand how it worked. The human writing was strange to him, but he had studied their language for years. "This is remarkable," he said to Commander Zexahol. "The humans built this to keep someone alive for decades. Maybe longer. Can we wake him up?" asked the commander. "I believe so. The pod systems are still working. We just need to reverse the freezing process." Zexal smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Do it. I want to talk to this human. He might know things about their technology or their final plans." Dr. Veltar nodded and began working on the pod's controls. Other Kethar scientists gathered around to watch. They had never seen a living human before. Most of them had only heard stories about the war. "The humans were weak," said one young scientist. "They couldn't fight us properly. That's why they lost." "Yes," agreed another. "They were too soft. They cared too much about things that didn't matter." Dr. Veltar pressed a button, and the pod began to warm up. The ice on the glass started to melt. Inside, the human's body began to change color, as blood started flowing through his veins again. "His heart is beating," said Dr. Veltar, looking at the pod's displays. "His brain is becoming active. He should wake up soon." The Kethar scientists moved closer to watch. They had weapons ready, just in case the human tried to fight. But they weren't really worried. What could one human do against a ship full of Kethar warriors? The pod made a soft hissing sound as it opened. Warm air rushed out, carrying the smell of chemicals and metal. The human's chest began to rise and fall as he breathed. His eyes moved under his closed lids. "He's dreaming," said Dr. Veltar. "His mind is trying to understand what's happening." Suddenly, the human's eyes opened. They were brown and confused. He looked around at the strange faces staring down at him. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. "Water," he finally whispered. His voice was weak and rough. Dr. Veltar gave him a small cup of water. The human drank it slowly, his hands shaking. He tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. "Where am I?" he asked. "What happened to the ship?" The Kethar looked at each other. This human seemed so helpless, so ordinary. They had expected something more dangerous. "You are on a Kethar ship," said Dr. Veltar in broken human language. "Your ship was destroyed long ago. You are the only one left alive." The human's eyes grew wide with shock. "The New Horizon? What about the other colonists? What about Earth?" "Earth belongs to us now," said Commander Zexal. "Your people lost the war. They are all dead or slaves." The human stared at him for a long moment. Then he began to cry. The Kethar watched with curiosity. They had never seen a human cry before. "My name is Jake Morrison," the human said between sobs. "I was just an engineer. I was supposed to help build a new world. That world will never exist," said Zexal. "But you are useful to us. You will tell us about human technology and culture." Jake nodded slowly. He seemed to accept his fate. The Kethar scientists were pleased. This would be easy. They had no idea how wrong they were. Jake Morrison sat in the small room they had given him. The walls were made of cold metal, and the only light came from a panel in the ceiling. He had been on the Kethar ship for 3 days now, and his body was getting stronger. But his mind was filled with sadness and confusion that the aliens had given him simple clothes to wear and food to eat. The food tasted strange, but it kept him alive. They asked him questions every day about human technology and culture. Jake answered them because he had no choice. Dr. Veltar came to see him every morning. The alien scientist was curious about everything. He wanted to know how humans built their machines, how they grew their food, and how they lived their lives. "Tell me about human emotions," Dr. Veltar said during one visit. Why do humans cry when they are sad? Jake looked at the alien with tired eyes. It's just something we do. When we feel pain inside, water comes from our eyes. It helps us feel better. The Cathar do not cry, said Dr. Veltar. We are stronger than that. Maybe, said Jake. But crying doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. Dr. Veltar wrote notes. On his datapad, he found humans very interesting. They were so different from his own people. The Cathar were warriors who fought and conquered. Humans seemed to care about strange things like art and music and love. What is love? Asked Dr. Veltar. Jake thought for a moment. Love is when you care about someone more than yourself. When you would do anything to keep them safe and happy. That sounds foolish, said the alien. Caring about others makes you weak. It makes you easy to defeat. Maybe that's why we lost the war, said Jake sadly. But as the days passed, Jake began to remember things. At first, it was just small pieces. He remembered working in the engine room of the New Horizon. He remembered his friend Lisa, who worked in the computer section. He remembered the day the Cathar ships attacked, and he remembered more. He remembered the emergency meeting in the ship's conference room. Captain Burke had been there, along with all the senior officers. They had talked about something called the Ascension Protocol. We're going to lose, Captain Burke had said. The Cathar ships are too strong. We can't outrun them, and we can't fight them. What about the protocol? Asked Dr. Collins, the ship's head scientist. We've been working on it for months. It's not ready, said Captain Burke. The tests aren't complete. We don't know if it will work. We have to try, said Dr. Collins. It's our only hope. Jake remembered volunteering for the experiment. He remembered signing papers and lying down on a table in the medical bay. Dr. Collins had given him an injection, and then everything went. Dark dot now. Sitting in his alien prison, Jake tried to understand what had happened. The injection had been part of the Ascension Protocol. But what was the protocol? And why couldn't he remember what it was supposed to do? He felt strange. His body was stronger than it had been before the cryosleep. His mind was clearer. Sometimes he could hear things that seemed far away. Other times he could feel the emotions of the Cathar around him. That when Dr. Veltar came to question him, Jake could sense that the alien was curious, but also afraid. When the guards brought him food, he could feel their boredom and disgust. The Cathar thought he was weak and pathetic. One day, something odd happened. Jake was eating his meal when the lights in his room began to flicker. The food tray in his hands started to shake. He looked around confused. Then everything went back to normal. Did you see that? He asked the guard who brought his next meal. See what? Asked the guard. The lights were flickering. The guard looked at the lights. They were working fine. You are imagining things, human. Your mind is weak from the cryosleep. But Jake knew he wasn't imagining it. Something was happening to him. Something was changing. The next day, Dr. Veltar came with more questions. But this time, Jake could hear the alien's thoughts. Not clearly, but like whispers in his head. Dr. Veltar was thinking about the tests he wanted to run. He was thinking about cutting Jake open to see how human organs worked. You want to dissect me, Jake said suddenly. Dr. Veltar stopped writing. What did you say? I said you want to cut me open to see how I work inside. The alien's yellow eyes grew wide. How did you know that? Jake didn't know how to answer. How could he explain that he had heard the alien's thoughts? I just guessed, but Dr. Veltar was suspicious now. He made notes on his datapad and left the room quickly. That night, Jake lay on his bed and tried to understand what was happening to him. He closed his eyes and concentrated. He could feel the ship around him. He could sense the Cathar moving through the corridors. He could even feel the engines humming in the ship's belly. More memories came back to him. He remembered Dr. Collins explaining the Ascension Protocol. "We think humans have abilities that we don't use," she had said. "Hidden powers that only come out in times of great danger. The protocol is designed to unlock these abilities." What kind of abilities? Jake had asked. "We're not sure. Maybe telepathy. Maybe the ability to affect matter with your mind. Maybe something else entirely. And you want to test this on me? Only if you volunteer. But Jake, if this works, you could be the key to saving humanity." Now Jake understood. The injection had been designed to change him, to make him more than human. But the process was slow. It was still happening, even after 50 years in cryosleep. He sat up in his bed and looked at the metal wall. He concentrated, trying to feel the metal. To his surprise, he could sense its structure. He could feel the molecules that made it up. He reached out with his mind and tried to push. The wall began to bend slightly. Jake pulled his hand back, frightened. He had actually moved the metal with his thoughts. The protocol was working. He was becoming something new, but he had to be careful. If the Cathar found out what he could do, they would either kill him or use him as a weapon. He had to pretend to be weak and helpless while he learned to control his new abilities. The next morning, Dr. Veltar came with Commander Zexel. The big alien looked at Jake with his cold yellow eyes. "My scientist tells me you said something interesting yesterday," said Zexel. "He thinks you might be able to read minds." Jake tried to look confused. "I don't know what you mean. I was just guessing. Were you?" asked Zexel. He stepped closer to Jake. "The Cathar have legends about humans with special powers. We thought they were just stories." "I'm just an engineer," said Jake. "I fix machines. I don't have any special powers." But even as he spoke, Jake could feel the commander's thoughts. Zexal was thinking about the old legends, about humans who could move objects with their minds and see the future. The Cathar had thought these were just myths told by defeated enemies. "Perhaps," said Zexal, "but we will watch you closely. If you are hiding something, we will find out." After the aliens left, Jake sat alone in his room. He was scared, but also excited. He was changing into something powerful, something that might be able to fight back against the Cathar. He thought about all the humans who had died in the war. He thought about Earth, now controlled by aliens. He thought about his friend Lisa and Captain Burke and Dr. Collins. They had all believed in the Ascension Protocol. Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his mind. He could feel the ship's computer systems. He could sense the data flowing through the circuits. With just a thought, he made a small light flicker in the corridor outside his room. The protocol was working. He was becoming more than human dot, and soon the Cathar would learn what that meant. Jake's memories came flooding back like a broken dam. He remembered everything now. The New Horizon hadn't been just a colony ship. It had been carrying humanity's last hope. He was sitting in his small room when it all became clear. The Ascension Protocol wasn't just about giving humans special powers. It was about evolution. It was about making humans into something the Cathar could never defeat. Dr. Collins had explained it to him in the medical bay. "We've studied human DNA for years," she had said. "Humans are different from other species. We have unused parts of our brain, genetic codes that are turned off. We think these are abilities that our ancestors had long ago." "What kind of abilities?" Jake had asked. "Think about it," Dr. Collins had said. "Humans have always been good at surviving. We adapt to any environment. We solve problems that other species can't. We work together in ways that seem impossible. What if these aren't just skills? What if they're powers that we've forgotten how to use? Jake remembered the other volunteers. There had been 12 of them total. Lisa was one of them. So was Marcus, the ship's pilot, and Sarah, who worked in communications. They had all been young and healthy. They had all believed in the protocol. The process will be slow, Dr. Collins had warned them. The changes will happen over time, and they might not happen at all unless you're in great danger. The human body has safety systems that keep these abilities locked away. Why? Jake had asked. Because they're too powerful, Dr. Collins had said. If humans could use these abilities all the time, we might destroy ourselves, so they only come out when we really need them. Now Jake understood. The Cathar invasion was exactly the kind of danger that would trigger the protocol. Being alone, surrounded by enemies, with his species nearly extinct, this was what would make the abilities appear. He could feel the power growing inside him every day. It was like a fire that was slowly getting bigger. He could sense the thoughts of the Cathar around him. He could feel the ship's metal structure. He could even affect the electrical systems with his mind, but he was careful to hide it. During the day, he acted weak and helpless. He answered Dr. Veltar's questions and pretended to be just a normal human. But at night, he practiced his new abilities. He learned to move small objects without touching them. He could make the lights in his room dim or brighten. He could feel what was happening in other parts of the ship. The power was growing stronger every day. On the 10th day, Dr. Veltar came to his room with something new. It was a metal restraint designed to hold his arms and legs. "We need to run some tests," said the alien scientist. "Medical tests. To understand how human bodies work." Jake felt the alien's thoughts. Dr. Veltar wanted to cut him open. He wanted to see Jake's organs and study his brain. The other Cathar scientists were curious about human anatomy. "I don't want to be cut open," said Jake. "You don't have a choice," said Dr. Veltar. "You are a specimen. You exist for our research." 2 Cathar guards came into the room. They were big and strong, with weapons on their belts. They moved toward Jake to put the restraints on him. Jake felt the power surge inside him. The fire in his chest became a burning flame. Without thinking, he stood up and pushed the guards away with his mind. The 2 aliens flew backward and hit the wall hard. They fell to the floor, unconscious. Dr. Veltar stared at Jake with wide yellow eyes. "Impossible," he whispered. Jake looked at his hands. He could feel energy flowing through them. The metal restraints in Dr. Veltar's claws began to bend and twist until they were useless. "You're one of them," said Dr. Veltar. "The legends were true." "What legends?" asked Jake. "The old stories about humans with powers. We thought they were just myths told by the defeated." Jake stepped toward the alien scientist. With each step, the lights in the room grew brighter. The metal walls began to vibrate slightly. "Tell me about these legends," Jake said. Dr. Veltar was shaking now. "The Cathar who fought in the war told stories. They said some humans could move objects with their minds. Others could see the future. Some could even control the elements. And you thought these were just stories?" "Yes, but now..." Dr. Veltar looked at the unconscious guards. "Now I see they were real." Jake felt more memories coming back. He remembered the final battle above Earth. The Cathar ships had surrounded the planet. Human ships had fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. The Cathar had superior technology and more warriors, but some humans had fought differently. Jake remembered reports of human soldiers who could dodge laser blasts, pilots who could fly their ships in impossible ways, engineers who could repair damage just by touching broken machines. "We were evolving," Jake said, more to himself than to Dr. Veltar. "The war was making us evolve." "What do you mean?" asked the alien. Humans adapt, said Jake. When we face danger, we become stronger. When we face impossible odds, we find ways to win. Your people attacked us, so we started becoming something that could fight back. Dr. Veltar. Back toward the door. I have to tell Commander Zexal. No, said Jake. You don't. He looked at the alien scientist and concentrated. Dr. Veltar's eyes became glassy and unfocused. Jake was controlling his mind. You will tell the commander that the tests went normally, Jake said. You will say that I am just a weak human, with no special abilities. You will not mention what happened here. I will not mention what happened here, repeated Dr. Veltar in a flat voice. Jake released his control, and the alien scientist shook his head as if waking from a dream. He looked confused for a moment, then nodded. The tests went well, Dr. Veltar said. You are just a normal human. I will report this to the commander. After the alien left, Jake sat down heavily. Using his powers was exhausting, but he was getting stronger. He could feel the abilities growing inside him like a flower opening to the sun. He thought about the other volunteers. Lisa, Marcus, Sarah, and the rest. Were they still alive? Were they trapped on other alien ships? Were their powers awakening too? Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his mind. He searched through space, looking for any sign of other humans. The galaxy was vast, and most of it was empty. But he could sense something. Far away, in different star systems, there were tiny sparks of familiar thought. Other humans. Other survivors. And some of them felt different. Changed. Like him. Over the next few days, Jake continued to pretend to be weak while his abilities grew stronger. He could now affect the ship's computer systems from his room. He could listen to the Cathar communications. He could even access their databases. What he learned made him angry. The Cathar hadn't just conquered Earth. They had hunted down human refugees across the galaxy. They had destroyed colony ships and enslaved survivors. They had tried to wipe out humanity completely, but they hadn't succeeded. There were still humans alive, scattered across dozens of worlds. Most were slaves or prisoners. But some were free, hiding in the dark corners of space. Jake also learned about the Cathar Empire. They controlled hundreds of worlds. They had conquered many species besides humans. They were cruel rulers who took what they wanted and destroyed what they didn't need, but they were also afraid. Jake found reports in their databases about anomalous humans, humans who displayed unusual abilities. The Cathar military had standing orders to kill any human who showed signs of special powers. They knew. They had always known that humans were different, that humans could become something dangerous. That's why they had tried so hard to destroy humanity completely. Jake stood up and looked at the walls of his prison. The metal was thick and strong, but he could feel its structure with his mind. He could sense the molecules that held it together. He reached out with his power and began to change the metal. The wall started to glow softly. The atoms rearranged themselves, becoming weaker and more brittle. With a gentle push, Jake made a hole in the wall big enough to walk through. He was no longer a prisoner. He was something the Cathar had feared for 50 years. He was a human who had awakened to his true potential, and it was time to show them what that meant. Jake stepped through the hole in the wall and into the ship's corridor. Alarms should have been going off. Guards should have been running to stop him. But Jake was controlling the ship's systems with his mind. The sensors couldn't see him. The cameras showed only an empty hallway. He walked toward the ship's bridge, his power growing with each step. The Cathar were about to learn that. They hadn't destroyed humanity. They had only made it stronger. Jake walked through the corridors of the Cathar ship like a ghost. The security cameras couldn't see him. The motion sensors didn't detect him. He was controlling the ship's systems with his mind, making himself invisible to their technology. Power inside him was like a burning star now. Every step he took made the lights flicker. Every breath he drew made the air itself tremble. The metal walls of the ship vibrated with energy that came from his awakened abilities. He could feel the fear of the Cathar crew. They didn't know what was happening, but they could sense that something was wrong. Their primitive instincts were telling them that a predator was loose on their ship. Jake reached the bridge and stood outside the heavy doors. Inside, he could sense Commander Zexahol and his officers. They were discussing their next destination. They planned to take Jake to a research station where alien scientists would study him. They still thought he was just a weak human specimen. Jake placed his hand on the door controls. The metal began to glow under his touch. The locks and security systems twisted and broke. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. The Cathar on the bridge turned to look at him. For a moment, nobody moved. They couldn't understand how a human prisoner had escaped from a locked room and walked through their secured ship. "Impossible," whispered Commander Zexahol. "The security systems would have detected you. Your security systems see only what I want them to see," said Jake. His voice was calm, but there was power in it that made the air vibrate. The bridge officers reached for their weapons. Jake looked at them and shook his head. Their hands stopped moving. They tried to grab their guns, but their bodies wouldn't obey them. "I don't want to hurt you," Jake said, "but I will if I have to." Commander Zexahol was braver than his officers. He managed to draw his weapon and pointed at Jake. "You're just one human. You can't fight all of us." "Watch me," said Jake. Zexahol fired his weapon. The energy blast should have killed Jake instantly. Instead, it stopped in mid-air, glowing like a trapped star. Jake held the deadly energy in his hand for a moment and let it dissolve into nothing. "How?" whispered Zexahol. "Your people made a mistake," said Jake. "You thought conquering Earth would end the human threat. But you didn't understand what humans really are." Jake walked closer to the commander. With each step, the lights on the bridge grew brighter. The computer screens began to flicker with strange patterns. The ship's systems were responding to his presence. "Humans adapt," Jake continued. "When you attack us, we become stronger. When you try to destroy us, we evolve. Your war didn't kill humanity. It made us into something new." Jake reached out with his mind and touched the ship's main computer. Instantly, he had access to all the ship's systems. He could control the engines, the weapons, the life support. The entire vessel was now under his command. "You're the one from the legends," said Zexahol. "The enhanced humans." "I'm just the beginning," said Jake. "There are others like me, and more are awakening every day." He accessed the ship's communication systems and sent a signal into space. It was a simple message, but it carried his mental signature. Any human with awakened abilities would be able to hear it. The response came immediately. Across the galaxy, other humans were answering his call. Jake could sense them in distant star systems. Former slaves who had broken free from their chains. Prisoners who had escaped from alien jails. Survivors who had been hiding in the dark corners of space. They were all changing. All becoming more than human. "What do you want?" asked Commander Zexahol. "Information," said Jake. "I want to know where you've taken my people. I want to know about every human prison, every slave colony, every research station. I won't tell you anything." Jake looked into the commander's yellow eyes. "You will." He reached into Zexahol's mind and began to search through his memories. The alien tried to resist, but Jake's power was too strong. He found what he was looking for. Images flashed through Jake's consciousness. Human prisoners on mining worlds. Families separated and sold as slaves. Children taken from their parents to be raised as servants. Scientists experimenting on human subjects to understand their biology. But Jake also saw something else. In the deepest, most secret files, he found reports of other, anomalous humans. Humans who had displayed impossible abilities. Most had been killed by Cathar forces, but some had escaped. "You've been hunting us," said Jake. "You knew we were becoming something dangerous." "The elders warned us," said Zexhal. "They said humans were different, that they could become a threat if they survived long enough. Your elders were right." Jake found the locations of human settlements throughout the galaxy. Some were prison colonies. Others were hidden refugee camps. A few were research stations where humans were being studied like animals. But there was something else. In the files, Jake discovered that the Cathar weren't the only alien species that feared humans. There was a council of different alien races. They had all agreed that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. "You're not just conquerors," said Jake. "You're part of a conspiracy. You and the other alien races decided to destroy humanity because you were afraid of what we might become." "We were right to be afraid," said Zexal. Jake nodded. "Yes, you were." He sent another signal into space. This time, it wasn't just a call to other humans. It was a command. He was telling every awakened human in the galaxy to begin the next phase of their evolution. The response was immediate. On dozens of worlds, humans began to break free from their prisons. Slaves turned on their masters. Prisoners walked through the walls of their cells. Scientists found their test subjects had become their captors. Jake could feel it all happening. The network of awakened humans was growing stronger. They were sharing their knowledge, their abilities, their power. What had started as individual awakenings was becoming a collective evolution. "What have you done?" asked Commander Zexal. "I've given humanity a chance to survive," said Jake. "For 50 years, you've hunted us. You've enslaved us. You've tried to wipe us out completely. But you failed, and now we're coming back." Jake accessed the ship's navigation systems and changed their course. Instead of heading to the research station, the Void Seeker was now flying toward Earth. "You're taking us to Earth?" asked Zexahol. "I'm going home," said Jake. "And I'm bringing proof that humanity still exists." The ship's engines roared to life, pushing the vessel through space at maximum speed. Jake could feel the power of the awakened humans growing stronger with each passing moment. They were no longer scattered individuals. They were becoming a unified force. On the bridge, the Cathar officers watched in terror as their prisoner became their master. Jake stood among them, his human form glowing with energy that their science couldn't explain. "Commander," said one of the officers, "what do we do?" Zexhal looked at Jake with a mixture of fear and respect. "We do nothing. We are no longer in command of this ship." "That's right," said Jake. "But I'm not your enemy. Not unless you make me one." Jake turned to face the entire bridge crew. His eyes glowed with soft blue light, and the air around him shimmered with energy. "Your people started this war," he said. "You invaded our world. You killed our families. You scattered us across the galaxy like dust. But I'm not interested in revenge." "What do you want then?" asked Zexal. "I want you to understand what you've awakened," said Jake. "For millions of years, humans lived on one small planet. We were limited by our biology, our technology, our short lives. But we always had potential. Potential that only emerged when we faced extinction." Jake gestured to the stars, visible through the bridge windows. "Your attack on Earth was the catalyst. The pressure that turned coal into diamonds. You didn't destroy humanity. You forced us to evolve." Commander Zexhal's claws scraped against his weapon's grip, but he didn't try to draw it again. "What are you now?" "We're what humans were always meant to become," said Jake. We're what every species becomes when they stop fighting for survival and start reaching for something greater. The ship's communication system crackled to life. Signals were coming in from across the galaxy. Human voices, speaking in languages from dozens of different worlds. But Jake could understand them all, even though many were speaking in alien tongues they had learned as slaves. Jake? Jake Morrison? Is that really you? The voice belonged to Lisa, his friend from the New Horizon. She was calling from a mining colony 3 star systems away. I'm here, Lisa, Jake replied, his voice carrying through space on waves of pure thought. How many of you are there? Hundreds, she said. Maybe thousands. We're all changing, Jake. We're all becoming something new. More voices joined the conversation. Marcus, the pilot, was calling from a prison ship. Sarah from the communications team was broadcasting from a refugee camp. One by one, the survivors of the Ascension Protocol were making contact. But they weren't the only ones. Other humans, ones who had never been part of the original experiment, were also awakening. The abilities were spreading, passed from one human to another through some mechanism that even Jake didn't fully understand. It's like a virus, said Dr. Veltar, who had been listening from the back of the bridge. But instead of making you sick, it makes you evolve. Jake looked at the alien scientist. Not a virus, an awakening. Humans have always had these abilities. We just needed the right conditions to you. The journey to the Galactic Council took 7 days. During that time, Jake transformed the Void Seeker from a Cathar warship into something entirely new. Using his abilities, he restructured the ship's systems, combining alien technology with human innovation in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The ship's metal hull became self-repairing. The engines could now travel faster than anything that Cathar had ever built. The communication systems could reach across the entire galaxy instantly. Most importantly, the ship could now support both human and alien life forms in perfect harmony. Commander, Zexhal watched these changes with growing amazement. How are you doing this? He asked Jake one day. You're changing the fundamental structure of matter. I'm not changing it, Jake replied. I'm asking it to become what it wants to be. Everything in the universe has potential. I'm just helping that potential become real. Dr. Veltar had become fascinated by Jake's abilities. The alien scientist spent hours taking measurements and asking questions. But instead of treating Jake like a test subject, he now approached him as a colleague. Your species is rewriting the laws of physics, Dr. Veltar said. According to our science, what you're doing is impossible. Maybe your science is wrong, said Jake. Maybe there are laws you haven't discovered yet. As they traveled, more human ships joined their fleet. Each vessel carried awakened humans who had escaped from alien control. Some ships were stolen, Cathar vessels. Others were rebuilt human ships that had been thought destroyed. A few were entirely new designs, created by humans who had learned to reshape matter with their minds. Jake could feel the network of human consciousness growing, stronger. Every day, more humans awakened to their abilities. Children who had been born in alien slave camps suddenly found they could move objects with their thoughts. Adults who had spent decades as prisoners discovered they could walk through walls. Elderly humans who had given up hope realized they could heal their own bodies. But the most amazing thing was how they used their powers. Instead of seeking revenge, most humans focused on helping others. They freed slaves from alien worlds. They rescued prisoners from detention camps. They healed the sick and fed the hungry. Your people are not what we expected, Commander Zexhal told Jake one evening. They were standing on the ship's observation deck, watching the human fleet grow larger each day. What did you expect? Asked Jake. Warriors, conquerors. We thought you would become like us, only stronger. That's because you don't understand what humans really are, said Jake. We're not a warrior species. We're a cooperative species. Our greatest strength has always been our ability to work together. On the seventh day, they reached the Galactic Council headquarters. It was a massive space station built in the shape of a ring. Representatives from hundreds of alien species lived and worked there, making decisions that affected the entire galaxy. The human fleet took position around the station. There were now over 2,000 ships, each one carrying awakened humans. The sight of so many vessels appearing out of nowhere sent panic through the station's defenses. Unknown fleet, identify yourselves, came a transmission from the station. Jake responded personally, his voice carrying across space through pure thought. This is Jake Morrison, representing the human species. We're here to talk. The response was immediate. Humans are extinct. This must be some kind of trick. We're very much alive, said Jake. And we have things to discuss. It took 3 hours of negotiation before the council agreed to meet with Jake. They were terrified, but also curious. According to their records, humanity had been wiped out 50 years ago. The appearance of a human fleet was impossible. Jake took a small shuttle to the station, accompanied by Commander Zexahol and Dr. Veltar. The two Cathar had become his allies, helping to arrange the meeting with the council. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate aliens of many different shapes and sizes. Representatives from dozens of species were present. Jake recognized some of them from the files he had stolen from the Cathar databases. At the center of the chamber sat the council leader, a being called High Arbiter Kellenox. It was tall and thin, with silver skin and multiple arms. Its voice was like wind through metal pipes. Impossible, it said when Jake entered the chamber. Humans were declared extinct. The Cathar Empire confirmed their elimination. Reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated, said Jake. He walked to the center of the chamber, seemingly unafraid of the hundreds of alien beings surrounding him. You are just one individual, said another council member. Even if some humans survived, you cannot represent your entire species. Jake smiled. Watch me. He reached out with his mind and contacted every awakened human in the fleet. For a moment, his consciousness merged with theirs. The chamber filled with a soft blue light as Jake's form became translucent. Inside his outline, the council members could see the faces of thousands of other humans. I am Jake Morrison, said Jake, but his voice was now the voice of every human in the fleet. I am Lisa Chun. I am Marcus Rodriguez. I am Sarah Kim. I am every human who refused to die when you tried to exterminate us. The alien council members backed away in fear. They had never seen anything like this before. What do you want? Asked High Arbiter Kellenox. The light around Jake faded, and he returned to his normal appearance. We want to make sure this never happens again. Your council decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. You were wrong. Were we? Asked another council member. Look what you've become. You have powers we don't understand. You could destroy us all. We could, Jake agreed, but we won't. Because that's not who we are. Jake gestured to the viewing screens around the chamber. They showed images of human activities across the galaxy. Humans were rebuilding destroyed worlds. They were freeing slaves from alien masters. They were healing the sick and caring for the weak. This is what humans do when we're not fighting for our lives, said Jake. We build, we heal, we help, we make things better. But your abilities, said High Arbiter Kellenox, they're too powerful. What's to stop you from conquering the galaxy? The same thing that always stopped us, said Jake. Our conscience, our empathy, our belief that all life has value. Commander Zexahol stepped forward. I can confirm this, he said. This human had the power to destroy my ship and kill my crew. Instead, he chose to work with us. He chose cooperation over conquest. Dr. Veltar nodded. I have studied him extensively. His abilities are incredible, but he uses them to create, not destroy, to heal, not harm. The council members murmured, among themselves in dozens of different languages. They were afraid, but they were also curious. The humans were clearly not what they had expected. What do you propose? Asked High Arbiter Kalinox. A new order, said Jake. No more extinction. Campaigns. No more deciding that one species is too dangerous to exist. Instead, we work together. We share knowledge. We help each other grow and evolve. And if we refuse? Jake's expression became serious. Then you'll face the consequences of your actions. Not through conquest or destruction, but through irrelevance. Humanity is evolving, and we're not going to stop. You can be part of that evolution, or you can be left behind. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members wanted to attack the human fleet immediately. Others argued for negotiation. A few suggested that they should study the humans to understand their abilities. In the end, it was fear that decided the matter. The council had seen what awakened humans could do. They had watched their prisons break open and their warships become powerless. They knew that trying to fight this new humanity would be futile. We agree to your terms, said High Arbiter Kalinox finally. But we want guarantees. We want to know that humans won't use their abilities to dominate other species. You have. My word, said Jake, and the word of every human in this fleet. We won't become the monsters you are afraid we might become. The agreement was signed that day. It established new laws protecting all species from extinction campaigns. It created councils where humans and aliens could work together on common problems. Most importantly, it recognized that evolution was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. 3 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of the ship he now called the New Horizon, in honor of the vessel where his journey had begun. The ship was approaching Earth, leading a fleet of humans returning home for the first time in 50 years. Earth was different now. The Cathar had strip-mined parts of it and built their own cities, but life was returning to the planet. Human. Survivors who had been hiding in caves and ruins were emerging into the sunlight. Awakened humans were using their abilities to heal the damaged ecosystems and restore the poisoned oceans. It's beautiful, said Lisa, who now served as the ship's communications officer. She had been one of the first humans to respond to Jake's call, escaping from a mining colony with dozens of other awakened humans. It's home, said Jake. And it's just the beginning. Over the past 3 months, the number of awakened humans had grown from thousands to millions. The abilities were spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Some scientists thought it might eventually affect every human in the galaxy, but Jake wasn't worried about that. He had learned that the abilities came with built-in safeguards. Humans who tried tea